Slack off. I did all that nonsense.
Yeah, I'm like, I think I did everything.
Hey, it's Dan. Can you hear me?
Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
still in your pajamas? I can't see you.
No, well, I did change. I'm cleaned up. This is our logo here that we're just gonna have through the course of it from our end.
Okay.
But yeah, we're excited. We're looking forward to it. Did Eric send you that PD? That there's like a slide. I don't know if
Yes.
or not. If you're gonna do a PowerPoint.
Yes, I am going to do a PowerPoint. I added it to the PowerPoint as the first slide. So if you want to like kick it off, I could just have that as the kind of background as you're kicking it off.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're not gonna do a slideshow, then we can just.
No, we are.
Oh, you are?
We're doing a PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, so what we normally do then is just insert that into your presentation, and then as soon as I'm
Yeah, I
done
did.
with my intro, then you just move on to the next one. And
Got it.
so
Okay. Yeah,
we're-
it looks like I just tried to share my screen and it says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
I'm doing it. Let me see if I can figure this out. Give me a second.
Sure.
I'm like, I feel like you can see all my stuff behind me. I'm not going to use one of those background things. I just, is this okay though?
Yeah, you're
Or is
fine.
it-
So I just made you a co-host, Christiana.
Got it.
I
Okay.
gotta change my name here.
All right. So
Oops, I think I accidentally hit something. No, I did not mean to record that. See, this is what Zoom does, and it drives me bananas. The second you do that, like it takes over my screen. So I did not mean to hit record. Sorry about that.
So
It was
no worries.
We'll record it
Okay.
once it gets started.
Does this work? Does everybody see it?
I can see it.
Yep.
Fantastic. That was easy. That like never happened.
Great, Eric, you're on the line too. I think you just tuned in. Okay, great. This is cool. So what I'll do is, what I typically do is I'll also thank you all for joining us this morning. Welcome to the webinar. Quick intro. I'll introduce myself and the task force, and then I'll say today we're proud to welcome Christiana, and I want to make sure Caccia Piotti.
Yeah, close enough. Cacciaporti, yeah.
That's got it. That's fine. And
I
then,
literally, when I'm introducing myself at conferences, I'm just like, I'm Christiana. I don't even go there because people just are like, whoop.
no problem. I hear you. I have a lot of Italians in my family, so I was close. But and then Carly Jean from AdLedger. And then I'll say one more item before we get started is if you have questions, towards the end we'll offer a Q&A session, but please, in the meantime, feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box during the presentation. And it depends. Sometimes we have folks that ask questions and then you can answer them in real time, or we can just save it towards the end. And usually we have everybody muted, except towards the end. If somebody has questions, I'll read the questions aloud, and then you can answer them. It really depends. Sometimes we've had a lot of questions, sometimes not so much, and we can wrap it up 40 or 45 minutes. Really, you have the full hour, but if you if you only need 30 to 40, that's totally fine.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I think it will be. This is a unique one. We've really been trying to feature all different types of blockchain projects, and this is the first one really on ad tech and media. So I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually ended up being super timely. Like, I'm not sure if you saw some of the news that's come out in the last several weeks, but there have been some really big regulatory decisions that Carly is going to talk about. So, like, for example, the EU just ruled that a transatlantic data transfer pact that was really important to the way that our industry does business is now invalid. So everybody's scrambling. So super timely and pretty exciting stuff.
That's really
scary stuff.
Very cool. Now, yeah, you feel free to mention any news highlights that are totally actually very timely, as you mentioned. And you should have the steering wheel on the side. You'll see right now Farouk and Eric are both in. They're my fellow co-chairs. I don't know. We'll keep most of the folks muted, but I think you can unmute people if you want. I'm not sure if you have that capability.
I probably won't, just so we can get through the presentation, and it might be that we answer some of the questions, because the way that we laid it out, I think is pretty logical, where we go through, like we start off with questions. Like I always do this at conferences and everyone guesses wrong, but I ask people, you guys are all consumers. Can you trace the supply chain of digital advertising today? Do you know how an ad gets to you? And everyone says no. And then I ask, okay, so how many, and obviously this will be rhetorical today since it's not in person, but, and then we talk about, okay, so if you had to guess, how many companies do you think are involved with this? And most people say 5, and it's really between 10 and 20. So we start off with that. We go into the history of how we got here. Carly does a regulatory overview. And then at the end, I tie in how blockchain and cryptography can help. So hopefully that will answer some questions. And then at the end, if anybody has anything specific or more technical, we could take them.
Fine with me. Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool.
And then there may be some follow-up questions. Some people email questions in. Some people don't contact us until after it ends. But if you receive anything like that, we'll pass them along.
Nice. Okay, cool. So I know you said you were wrapping up the initiative soon. What is kind of the next step? Or is the government gonna kind of take some time to think about how this can be implemented, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think they will. In addition to these webinars, we're really hammering out a final report. It's going to be anywhere between 40 to 60 pages, maybe longer. We're trying to consolidate most of it, and it'll be similar to what other states have done, like Caitlin Long is an example in Wyoming and other states. Mm-hmm. We're going to put forward a series of recommendations for the state to consider, a few pilot projects, a few other solutions at the legislative level and the administrative level. Ultimately, they can do what they want. We're not an authoritative board. We're more of just a task force. But we think that some of the solutions we're going to present are very relevant, and they can improve efficiencies to the state and foster economic development, attract jobs. And then, the military, obviously, there's going to be some suggestions in there as well.
Yes, they desperately need better.
I know they do. This. And so I think that's really, to answer your question, really, that's hopefully we'll button this up by end of August, September. The state the legislature just adjourned. So during even numbered years, they have short sessions. Now the long session will kick back up in January. But we're hopeful that this will be, we're going to get some copies made and printed off and get it in front of the key decision makers. So it's exciting. I think, I think we're on the cusp of something.
Very cool. So is your next move, Dan, like more governmental, do you think? Or are you looking at startup stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at a few different things. I mean, I'm still spending most of my time in Washington, D.C. So okay, cool. I'm still considering advocacy arm. It just depends. I'm open to several things, but right now I'm doing a consulting for the Blockchain Association, which is similar to what the Chamber had done. They're much more focused on the crypto exchange side. I'm talking to a few exchanges and working with some startups as well on some serious fundraising. So I got my
I've heard some rumors that JP Morgan is going to acquire Coinbase now that decision was just released, that banks can hold crypto.
Yeah, it's quite, they can afford them. I personally hope they don't. I hope that Coinbase becomes their own unicorn in and of itself, but
I think they should stay. You would think that it stays truer to the spirit of blockchain if they stay. I wonder.
Hey guys, it's Eric. Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to send you a quick update to that member slide if you don't mind taking that one down. Sure. For a second. Notice a quick little error. I'm gonna get over to you right now. Sharing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Moving too fast this morning.
I know this was an early one.
Coinbase represents in many ways like the face of Bitcoin, even if it's not, it's not really a company. But,
right.
And so they've been around since 2012. They actually have some ties to North Carolina. Fred Ersham, he went to Duke. He went to Duke. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
And he and Armstrong, moved to San Francisco because that's where all the venture capital money is.
Yeah, of course. But I know Red Hat is in Raleigh, so is like the government of North Carolina trying to foster more, attract more tech jobs?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they already do have quite a bit, as you said. Red Hat. They have big operations for IBM, probably the biggest in IBM outside of New York. Lenovo. So there's already a culture
Wow.
here in Research Triangle for that, but there's always room for more. And
Right. Yeah. You would think that especially med tech would do well there too.
yeah, that's what Eric does, and Farouk actually too.
Oh, cool.
They both do a lot of that work.
Very cool. My CEO at MadHive did a bunch of consulting at GEM, which I think is just such a cool idea. Are you guys familiar with them?
I know Jim. I didn't think they were still around. I mean, I know if you're talking about the blockchain.
Oh, this was years ago. I don't know if I haven't caught up with them in a while.
But yeah, definitely focused on the healthcare space. I remember them very well. And then Hashed Health.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jim was a member of the Digital Chamber back.
Yeah.
Way back.
Okay. Yeah, back in the day.
Sometimes we get started around 10:01 or so. We got a few stragglers that come
Okay.
in. So usually I'll leave people, I'll kick it off at around 1 minute after 10.
Okay. Okay, good for you. Keep it nice on time. You're going to email me a new one?
Did it or just sent it?
Okay.
Sent it. Just make sure I save it. County.
Are we both, she and I both we're going to be on video the whole time, right? So I have to like drink my drinks before that.
If you want to, yeah, you can always take off video if you want, but yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I just got it. Okay.
Ah!
Right. How does that look, Farouk? Or Eric, sorry.
The content's right. I don't know why the formatting gets messed up when I send it over, but it's good enough.
I know sometimes.
Probably.
Yeah, probably Mac
taking
too.
some styles from your. That's all right.
Yeah. Okay.
My slides are so much more boring than yours.
Well, I had them designed forever ago, and I just didn't update them for this. So next time I'll make my design team do it. This is like if I was a political candidate, this is like my stump speech deck that I like switch around depending on my audience.
Are you back now in New York?
I am. Yeah, my fiance was finally released from his, issues in the military.
Great. Okay. Well, good.
Yes. He's barely taken off his beret since then. He's been like flattening it.
That's funny. Well, anytime you guys want to come back down to Fayetteville, I'm sure you prefer to stay up there, but just let us know.
Yeah, well, his cousin is in Raleigh, so we do have an excuse to go back.
Well, that's just about where everybody on this task force is. They're either in Raleigh or
really?
Charlotte. Yeah, there's a few that are in Chapel Hill. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like Raleigh a lot. It's a cute little city.
All right, I'm going to go on mute for a minute until I'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Oops. Okay. Sounds good.
Hey, Christiana, can you see the chat box just on the side there? Okay.
Yes. Yep. I can see it.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Thanks for your patience. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Dan Spooler. I hope everybody is having a great Tuesday. Welcome to the latest North Carolina Blockchain Initiative webinar series. Again, this is Dan Spooler. I'm a co-chair, and I'd like to welcome you along with my fellow co-chairs, Eric Porper, Farouk Oxatin, and Agnes Gamble to this webinar. I'd also want to thank Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, Dan Forest, as well as his staff for launching this task force. They've really provided us a lot of great support and latitude in putting together several of these blockchain educational efforts and this webinar series over the past 6 months. I also want to take a moment to thank our fellow board members. You'll see their names here on the screen on the welcome page. They come from various backgrounds, business, policy, academia, and they're all experts in their respective fields, and we really appreciate their dedication to this voluntary effort. So over the past 6 months, we've featured well over 10 of these webinars, and we've highlighted some of the blockchain ecosystem's most notable projects and thought leaders. Today, we're really excited because we're going to be covering a topic that nearly everybody has interaction with on a daily basis in one way, shape, or form, and that is media and advertising and ad tech. We're proud here today to welcome Christiana Cacciapotti and Carly Jean from AdLedger. So they're going to be making a presentation in a moment, but before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that if you have questions, we're going to offer a Q&A session towards the end. But in the meantime, please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box in the Zoom webinar. So without further ado, I'm proud to introduce both Christiana and Carly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. So good morning, everyone. Here we go. My name is Christiana, and I run an organization called AdLedger. We are a nonprofit consortium of about 90 of the most powerful companies in advertising and media. And our mission is to build out open technical standards that leverage blockchain and cryptography to make advertising a more efficient and accountable and transparent place. So presenting with me today is one of our board members, Carly Jean. Carly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Christiana. My name is Carly Jean. I am the VP of Global Digital Responsibility and Public Policy at Kinesso, a data and tech company representing some of the world's largest advertisers, and then yes, board member and policy lead for AdLedger.
Awesome, thank you. So in happier times, when we're in person at conferences, I really like to open with this question because, you know, we're all consumers. We have supercomputers in our pockets. We're on our screens all day. And usually if I were to ask you, where do those ads come from? How do they get from the brands that place them to you as a consumer? Most normal humans that are not in ad tech would not be able to trace that supply chain. And when I ask this question at conferences, how many companies do you think play a role in getting that ad from the consumer, or from the brands rather, to you as a consumer? Most people usually guess around 5. And they're really surprised when I say that the real number is anywhere between 10 and 20 companies, which is obviously really, really big for a supply chain. So how did we get to that kind of convoluted place? So to back up a little bit to kind of the birth of online advertising, that happened in 1994. So in 94, that was when what was widely acknowledged to be the first ad ever placed online was placed by AT&T on Wired.com. At the time, it was hotwire.com, the digital arm of Wired magazine, a technology publication. And for that transaction to happen, somebody at Wired called somebody at AT&T and they made the sale. So it was very direct. Only those 2 companies were involved with the transaction. And it was very much human. And so this went well. Our industry was kind of bored, and advertisers wanted more. And so a new class of companies called ad networks evolved. And their business model was fairly simple. So ad networks knew that publishers or websites, and ad tech we call websites, or anyone that creates content, a publisher. So these ad networks knew that publishers were not selling out 100% of their inventory or ad slots every month. And so what the ad networks would do was they would go to the publishers and they would say, hey, I know you're not selling out, so why don't you sell what's left over to me at a discount? And they would do this with several different publishers. So they would aggregate a bunch of ad inventory, and then they would turn around to the brands and the advertisers and say, hey, I can't tell you exactly who you'll be advertising on because you can't cannibalize the publisher's direct sales, right? So I can't tell you exactly who it will be, but it's going to be a premium news package of inventory. And to make up for that kind of opacity of me not being able to tell you exactly where you'll be running, I'll give you a discount. So let's say they purchase that advertising from Wired at $5. They would turn around and sell it for $8. And so in this scenario, for a while, really everyone was winning. The publisher was getting something instead of nothing. The advertiser was getting a discount, and the ad network was making a margin. And so for a while, this went really well. But after some time passes, the party stops for 2 reasons. The first reason is really simple, and that's that the ad networks got greedy. And instead of putting truly premium inventory in what they were billing as premium packages, they were putting lower quality inventory to fatten their margins. And then the second reason that this kind of stopped and things changed is that in 2007, the iPhone invented. And so in a word, the reason is data. So all of a sudden we had this device that consumers carried with them in the physical world on their person, and they used it to interact with content they liked. They used it to interact with, you know, their family and friends. They used it to even search for products they might buy. And so obviously this amount of data is a marketer's dream. Everybody wants to know, is this someone who might want to actually buy my product, or would I be wasting my money by advertising to them? So to a large extent, it's a marketer's dream, but it's only useful if we can find a way to activate on it, to action on it. And so in 2007, programmatic advertising, as we know it today, evolved to respond to this kind of demand from advertisers. So at this point, advertisers are saying, okay, I want more transparency than the ad networks gave me, but I want the same reach and scale that I was able to get by advertising to many different publishers. So I'm getting more humans than I would get on just one publisher. So I want that same reach and scale, but I want more transparency. I want more automation, and I want to be able to implement and use this data that I have that the consumers and my customers are generating. And so today, this system that I'm about to walk you through didn't evolve overnight, but today this is the answer to that question that I asked at the beginning of what is the supply chain. So today, the way the supply chain works is that instead of turning to an ad network, publishers, advertisers, and their agencies turn to software. And so on the advertiser side, or the demand side, as we say, they turn to software called the demand side platform, or a DSP. And this is super simple. It's basically just software that they go into and they say, this is the type of ad that I'm going to be running. I want it to run alongside news content or sports content. This is my budget. These are the dates I want to run, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the publisher side, there's mirror image software called an SSP, or a supply side platform. And so a publisher will go to their SSP and say, I'm this publisher, my content is news related, and I have this many ads over this amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have exchanges that sit in the middle and kind of make matches based on all of that different information. And then because we have all of this data that we discussed earlier on little breadcrumbs about who consumers are and what they might want to buy and where they are in the physical world, we need DMPs, or data management platforms, to kind of make sense of all of that data and implement it and organize it. And then, because this is getting so long and ridiculous, we have ad servers, that is software that physically kind of picks up that ad file, whether it's an image file or a video file, whatever, and just drops it along to kind of the next person in line. And then, because we have all of these different companies that you see a little asterisk inside of the box, all of those companies that have that asterisk have their own disparate reporting system. And so to kind of referee between all of the different reporting, a class of companies called third-party verification partners evolved, and their job is literally to kind of referee between what an advertiser thinks is true and what a publisher might think is true. So obviously there are a ton of different problems with the way that this supply chain works, and that could be kind of a whole talk in and of itself. But at a high level, the first one is fraud. So obviously when you have a supply chain that's this long and convoluted, it's really easy for fraudsters to kind of take advantage of all the different attack vectors that are created. The second problem is that each of these companies take out a piece of the ad dollar, so a portion of the money the advertiser is spending, before it gets to the publisher. So there's a really serious kind of economic efficiency problem going on here. So generally, most studies agree that between 30 and 50% of what the advertiser spends actually gets to the publisher, and the rest is kind of gobbled up by all of these intermediaries, which is insane, right? The next one is discrepancies. So we have the governing bodies of ad tech today saying that about 10% of what an advertiser thinks they should be paying, and what a publisher thinks they should be paid, is okay. And so to give you an idea of how these kind of discrepancies arise is, one quick example is that some of these companies will count a video ad as having happened when the page loads. And another company might count that a video ad has happened only when the user clicks play. So in like 2 seconds, you can see how easy it is for discrepancies to be introduced into our ecosystem. And so when you think about 10% being allowed effectively, on these billions of dollars that's flying around this ecosystem. It's really crazy. This is our currency. Impressions in advertising, that's our currency. And imagine if a bank just lost 10% of their assets overnight. Like, no other industry really operates like this. There are conflict of interest where one company will serve more than one function here. We have the very serious problem of bad user experience and the consumer privacy issue. All of these companies are trading data around the supply chain, so it's really hard to keep track of who has what and what was consented to share with whom and all of that kind of fun stuff. And on top of that, a few months ago, if you heard kind of like screaming into the ether, it was probably ad tech exec responding to an announcement that Google made a few months ago. And that was to kind of frame the problem. Google's Chrome is the largest browser by market share. Just about 3/4 of humans who use the internet use it via Chrome. And their announcement, which just got like a tad bit of attention in ad tech, was that the third-party cookie was now going to be going away across Google's browser. And so this is really significant for independent ad tech and kind of piles on to the problems that I outlined earlier. So a cookie, for those who don't know, is just like a little snippet of code that can be placed on a user's browser. And that snippet of code is used for a zillion different reasons out in the wild. But in advertising, the way we use it is an advertiser will, for example, place a cookie on a user's browser if they visit their website, or if they put something in their cart and then abandon it and not go through with that purchase. A publisher might cookie a user because they happen to like a bunch of cooking articles. If they read all kinds of articles on the same kind of topic, they might place a cookie on the user's browser so that they remember that this user likes this type of content. And so there's a bunch of different benefits in terms of personalization, but there are very serious privacy concerns, which is why Google Chrome has announced that they are deprecating the cookie. And so, yes, the independent ad tech ecosystem has all of those problems, plus this new kind of headwinds from the regulatory environment that Google and other large tech companies are responding to. But what if just one company served all of those functions that we saw in that big, long supply chain? Most people think that it would be better because, obviously that supply chain is convoluted, and just visually, you think that maybe if one company handled everything, it would be more efficient. But clearly, from what we've seen since 2016, and even before then, having just one company as, the behemoth in the room and to collect this breathtaking amount of consumer data is not healthy either for both the industry and for consumers. So within our industry, there are a bunch of problems with, these big guys controlling everything. One of which is that there's really no auditing power. So if Facebook tells you as an advertiser that you placed 100 ads, you're paying for 100 ads. You don't have anyone that you can go and kind of validate that actually happened. There's no, it's very much kind of a black box. And then on the publisher side, if Facebook makes a tweak to their newsfeed algorithm and half of your traffic just disappears overnight, you also have no recourse. So within our industry, obviously there's a little bit of a frenemies vibe because, advertisers clearly use them too. But outside of our industry, especially since 2016, there's been this increasing realization that, among governments from the EU to right here in California, that something needs to be done to kind of regulate how data is collected and used and shared in our space. And Carly is going to give us a little bit more of an overview on that.
Sure, thank you, Christiana. So what do we do about these companies that seemingly control more and more of our digital lives? With competition and fairness concerns on the rise, governments, not limited to the US and the EU, seek to provide more oversight of these tech giants. There is increased concern around the current competitive and unpredictable market some will soon argue is now threatened by the rise of Chinese social media apps. It comes to no surprise that 4 of the largest tech CEOs have been called to testify in front of Congress tomorrow. These tech companies increasingly control larger portions of the economy and also our digital lives, we need them to act not simply legal, but also just and fair to people. So we'll start with a high-level overview of the data privacy landscape. While not the first of its kind, the GDPR went into effect in May of 2018 and has for the past 2 years been the echelon of data protection for people. Shortly after, and I'm sure you've all heard a lot about this, California established the Ccpa, which came into law the beginning of this year, January 1st, but became enforceable actually on the 1st of this month, July 1, and increasing data protection regs known as the CPRA, also known as CCPA 2.0, are already on the ballot for November. And actually, in a recent blow to thousands of companies and potentially billions of dollars impact to the economy, the highest court in the EU, known as the CJEU, just invalidated Privacy Shield, which was previously relied on as the mechanism that protects transfers of EU data to the US. It's a decision known as Schrems II, and this has left companies and privacy professionals completely scrambling. But beyond that, I'm just going to, list at a high level, not all, but just a few of the data privacy laws or action that have taken place simply in the last month. So in Jamaica, there was a Data Protection Act approved. In Egypt, a personal data protection law was enacted. New Zealand proposed seeking comments, or they sought comments and proposed repeal and replacement of New Zealand's 6 privacy codes of practice. Canada, Brazil, China, this is happening everywhere. And the complication is, for businesses, the extraterritoriality of these laws extend protection for its citizens' personal data outside its physical borders and across the vast borderless internet. And if it weren't complex enough, COVID-19 has both increased protection around sensitive data as well as provided much difficulty in both compliance and enforcement.
Ready to switch?
Yep.
Okay. Just let me know.
Fine, thank you. So first-party data that lives inside these closed ecosystems, such as Facebook and Google, has become even more powerful, intended to democratize access to data and transparency to people. As people, are you more likely to give consent to a company you use across other services, such as your Gmail or Google Maps, or Facebook and Instagram, or companies such as Magnite, The Trade Desk? My guess is you haven't heard of the latter companies. So inadvertently, some of this well-intended change in policy has given more power to walled gardens. People are more likely to give consent to a household name than an independent ad tech firm. Big tech has big budgets for not only compliance, but also lobbying. Compliance can become costly for mid to small businesses, often a risk mitigation than a value driver. However, what we know we can expect is more legislation, varying uses of data, and increased expectations among people. Marketing and advertising is now the focal point. Scandals such as Cambridge Analytica have increased scrutiny. There is an inherent change in the nature of data, though. How it is collected, used, and shared. Data can be actively collected versus observed or modeled. Commercial and government surveillance have increased international concern. So the Schrems II decision that I just mentioned a moment ago, the court had specifically made reference to US government surveillance as the reason that it was immediately invalidated on the day of the decision, July 16th. Business failures in general, there seems to be a never-ending supply of data breaches every day, every time we turn on the news. And we are seeing global signs from not only the GDPR and the CCPA, but think Brexit and forced localization. At the end of the day, though, advertisers don't want to violate anyone's privacy. They just want to reach the right people at the right time with the right message around the right product or service. Data is just the proxy for how, where, and when to facilitate this value exchange. Leading with the ethical use of data and the management of risk and fairness for all stakeholders, we can now focus on being accountable, ethical, safe, and secure, because integrity is good business. So our industry is at a crossroads. Older methods for executing data-driven campaigns are becoming inaccessible unless we put ourselves at odds with our own governments, our people, and each other. We need to be better, be thoughtful, be accountable. It is a very intensive effort to be digital responsible, and we need to build trust again. We are so fortunate that advertising is a really important driver and continues to be even in our current economic environment. It is said that advertising is 3% of the GDP that drives the other 97. It creates consumer choice that forms the basis of capitalistic societies. So there is hope. Innovative new technologies like cryptography and blockchain are being applied to our industry as we speak, so that respect for people, privacy compliance is a legal obligation, and profitability can all coexist. And this is where we head back to AdLedger and Christiana.
Yes, so cryptography it always sounds complicated, but people are always shocked to hear that it's been around for centuries, actually. There are stories of Julius Caesar kind of scrambling the letters of the alphabet when he's sending his generals missives from the battlefield. So if the letters fell into the wrong hands, they wouldn't be as easy to understand. So it's really just the study and practice of disguising or encoding information in such a way that only the intended receiver can decode or understand it. And the reason why we're so bullish on cryptography, especially when it's combined with blockchain, is that blockchain, I would argue, is just kind of a subset of cryptography, because a blockchain in and of itself is really just 4 elements of cryptography that were combined to create something new and novel when Satoshi, whoever he, she, or they are, released the white paper, almost 10 years ago now. Or over 10 years ago, rather. And so the reason we're so bullish is firstly because it's so closely related to blockchain, and so combining it, these 2 really groundbreaking technologies, is very natural. But second of all, because we all interact with cryptography every day, whether we know it or not. So when you are online, every day cryptography is generally doing 2 things for you. The first one is it's validating the identity of entities on the web. And so basically what that means is that when you type in Amazon, or if you go to read a story in the New York Times, whatever you're doing online, as you're typing in the domain name, the system that underpins the validation of those domain names, so that there couldn't be a kind of imposter Amazon when you navigate to Amazon.com, that system is all underpinned by cryptography. The infrastructure is an open source technical standard that was agreed upon, and is one of the foundational reasons that the web was able to get such massive adoption in record time. The second thing cryptography does for you, if you shop as much as some of us, almost every day, is that it protects any sensitive data that you're typing into your browser. So as you're typing into your, let's say, your credit card data into Amazon to make a purchase, it encrypts that message, that data, so that it can't be skimmed or stolen from the browser. And so when you hear of hacks happening, those are usually happening when the data is sitting in a database somewhere. It's not happening and being actively stolen from the browser. And that system, again, is cryptography. It's an open technical standard that's based in cryptography. And so when we were thinking at AdLedger about how we can solve some of these large systemic problems within our space, we felt that cryptography was a really natural fit to combine with blockchain to solve some of these problems, because really e-commerce is very much an adjacent industry to advertising. And so we're now testing an open technical standard that does 3 key things in its first iteration. The first thing is that it uses a cryptographic technique called digital signatures to validate the identities of parties to an ad transaction. So similar to the way that we don't worry that we're not on the real Amazon, or we're on an imposter New York Times or something, that same kind of principle, we're just kind of lifting and shifting that into advertising, because believe it or not, within the kind of advertising ecosystem and the open technical standards that we use today, it's fairly easy to impersonate someone else. And so creating a system that uses digital signatures to to create identities that are non-forgeable, meaning that you can't fake them, would actually be a really huge innovation. The second thing, the second key goal, is to create supply chain integrity. And so once we validate one company's identity in this immutable or non-forgeable way, we can link them together to create a chain. And this has really big implications for a lot of the privacy regulation that Carly outlined for us, because a lot of this legislation requires something called informed consent, and requires that companies, especially in the media and advertising ecosystem, respect those choices that consumers make when they're opting in or opting out to the collection or use of a specific type of data. And so creating this type of sealed supply chain will also allow us to create what within a lot of ad tech frameworks is referred to as a consent string. So it will allow us to trace the consent of a consumer through the supply chain and immediately be able to identify if anyone manipulates those choices and tries to misuse that consumer data. And the third thing, which I think is the most interesting and the most future facing, is creating an infrastructure for secure data access and validation. And so as Carly mentioned, at the end of the day, her brands, her clients at her ad agency are not fundamentally interested in what you're up to and what your data is telling them about you. All they care about is trying to sell their product, and that data is just a proxy for selling the product. And so if we can create tools that give advertisers the ability to target consumers with something that is relevant to them, so we're not showing a consumer in New York an ad for a car dealership in Arizona or something ridiculously mismatched like that. If we can give advertisers the tools to target consumers effectively without showing them the consumer's personal data, that would really be kind of the holy grail for our industry. And so the way that we achieve that is through tools such as allowing a publisher, for example, the ability to encrypt their data so that only specific parties downstream can decrypt specific portions of it that are relevant to their need in the supply chain. And so these ideas and these technologies are still nascent by any measure, but this is clearly a really pivotal time for us as an industry, and there's certainly a genuine desire to be good corporate citizens and to find ways that marry profitability for advertisers, so the industry goals, with privacy and choice and respect for our customers. And so we don't have all of the answers yet, but AdLedger was born because we know that we won't find the answers without working together and without collaborating and taking everyone's input. So thank you so much for joining us. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about what we've talked about this morning, and we're happy to take any questions now if you have them.
Yeah, we actually, Christiana, this is Dan. We did have one that
Sure.
came in. We may have a few more that are going to trickle in as well. We had
Sure.
one from Charlotte. It's in the chat box down there, but I'll just read it out loud. Consortiums in the blockchain space seem to be growing in popularity, such as R3. What is the benefit of working in a consortium?
I would say that the benefit of working within a consortium is similar to the benefit of open source technology and open source standards. Consortia allow for they're kind of like the table for everyone to discuss things around, and to have all of the major players within an industry have a seat around that table is really significant because, with advertising, everybody needs something different from whatever system that we're going to use. A publisher is trying to sell the most ad space for the highest price. An advertiser is supposed to is trying to buy the most ad space for the lowest price. So a lot of times, and advertising is not alone in this, an industry will have competing interests from different stakeholders. And so a consortium is a really effective tool that we can use to create discussion and to create open technical standards that everyone can kind of sign on to, that would be inappropriate for a private company to kind of own. Because the goal is to create kind of the rising tide that lifts all boats, and sometimes having kind of a godlike figure in the industry or in any industry that kind of is the arbiter of truth is unhealthy. So it's almost like the same reason you need a government.
Okay, now that makes sense. That's a great question.
Yeah.
If there's any other questions, folks, feel free to chime in. I can unmute you. If not, let's see. Okay, well, we're actually just a little over the bottom of the hour, and I think this was fantastic. I think it opened up a lot of doors, especially answered a lot of questions that our attendees had. I suppose right now, if you have any other comments, feel free to chime in, folks. Farouk, do you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, the one I was just getting ready to type is, again, thank you so much. This was not only insightful, it was very encouraging to see that this sort of research and development is happening. My specific question had to do with, I recall through past research that you guys sort of openly welcome working groups. And can you expand on that so that when we have, more discussions on this, how is the process of getting involved in a working group with AdLedger and what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So AdLedger, first of all, is free to join for publishers, agencies, and brands. And the reason that we have structured our bylaws in this way is to allow for who we see as the true stakeholders really to take control of the consortium, and they're actually the only ones who have a vote. So that middle layer that you saw in the in that big long supply chain slide is not kind of an inhibitor to innovation. And so the process of creating a working group is really simple. You just approach the consortium if you have an idea or a specific topic, and if it's not something we're already working on, we're happy to provide you with resources and connect you with members who may be interested. So for example, Carly leads our policy working group, which is really focused around helping our regulators understand advertising. As you saw in our presentation, ad tech is fairly technically complex. Obviously, blockchain is pretty technically complex too, and often our regulators aren't as hip to the tech lingo as maybe our industry experts are. So that's one working group. We have one focused on consumer privacy. So it's fairly decentralized in that we allow leaders of working groups to determine things like meeting cadences and goals and KPIs. We really want AdLedger to be governed by its members.
So how
Super, thank you.
Christiana, how best for anybody on this call or within the state to get a hold of you? Is AdLedger the most appropriate medium, or is there another way?
Yeah. Yep. Our website, adledger.org, is available. We have all of our research on there. If you're interested in these topics, we have a bunch of white papers and both qualitative and quantitative research on there. There's also a contact box on there. My email was in the presentation. If we're planning to send around the deck, my email will be in there. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn, so I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, thanks for that. We'll certainly connect you with anybody on the call who expresses interest, and don't hesitate. Everybody on the call, don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be glad to put you in touch with them directly. This has just been a pleasure. I really appreciate the two of you giving us a presentation today on this topic. It's very important, very timely, as you said. I want to encourage everybody also to visit our YouTube page. We're going to be uploading this webinar onto that. There's a link for it in the chat box. We also have our website, ncblockchain.tech. Don't hesitate to send us an email if you have any ideas or questions on future webinars, or if you need to get in touch with Christiana or Carly. But thank you. We appreciate it on behalf of the state of North Carolina and the task force. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.